Last week at Vidcon, Anita Sarkeesian managed to make a complete fool of herself. In this video, I'm not going to be talking about what Anita did exclusively, but I do need to make sure that we're all on the same page before I get into what I actually want to talk about. So I apologize if most of you already know all this. A bunch of shitlords, that is content creators from the anti-sjw community here on YouTube, attended an event that she was one of the panelists of. Our fellow shitlords here decided to sit exclusively in the first 3 rows of a section of seating, to make their presence known to the speakers. Other than that, they did nothing to distinguish themselves from the rest of the attendees at this particular panel, even going so far as to establish rules among the group to cause no interruptions. Even something as small as chuckling if one of the speakers said something ridiculous as an actual statement was considered to be a disruption, so it could be said that everyone was on their best behavior. A short while after Anita began speaking, she apparently surveyed the crowd and was the first to notice this group of anti-sjw content creators. Now, a reasonable person would just be aware of the fact that their detractors were in the audience and not draw a bunch of attention to them, or at least allow them to make the first move if they had any intention of causing a disruption. But not Anita. Instead, what she decided to do was summon security to surround the group. She even went as far as asking for these peaceful audience members to be removed from the event, which security refused to do because they hadn't done anything wrong. And then she went on to do this.
Yeah, and so I think it's a conversation that needs to keep happening, right? If you Google my name on YouTube, you get shitheads like this dude who are making these dumbass videos.
Why don't we just talk?
Whatever, dude.
Exactly.
But it's, you know, like the fact that these dudes are making endless videos that just go after.
As I'm sure most of you know by now, Anita was talking about Sargon of Akkad, good old Mr. Carl Benjamin. So, like I said earlier, I'm sure everyone has had enough time since Thursday to take it all in and give their thoughts on what happened. We're going to be talking about what happened afterward, specifically Sargon's petition.
I was sat quietly anticipating an interesting discussion, but instead, Sarkeesian decided to use her position of institutional privilege as one of Vidcon's featured creators to launch an unprovoked tirade of abuse after singling me out specifically to bully, culminating in her calling me a shithead and a garbage human. On page 9 of Vidcon's Code of Conduct, there is a paragraph detailing what construes harassment. It reads: disorderly conduct that includes but is not limited to any behaviour that is illegal, unsafe, disruptive, discriminatory, or causes excessive discomfort to our attendees or guests. Anita Sarkeesian violated Vidcon's Code of Conduct by abusing me from the stage. Although you can't hear it in the video, after receiving this abuse, I told her that I just wanted to talk. Being abused by Anita Sarkeesian was understandably my least favourite part of Vidcon so far, compared to the highlight, which was bumping into my favourite content creator, Boogie2988. I have enjoyed Boogie's work for many years, and cyberbullying is an issue I personally experience every day, so as a paying customer, I was eager to see my favourite YouTuber discuss it. Instead, I now expect Anita to be unable to contain her disdain towards myself and other members of the audience, and launch another spiteful and humiliating attack, which her followers will mimic as they did the previous night, because she's clearly unable to remain professional and refrain from violating Vidcon's Code of Conduct. For this reason, I am formally petitioning Vidcon's co-founders, Hank and John Green, to remove Anita Sarkeesian from the cyberbullying panel on Saturday to prevent further such incidents and maintain the polite and prestigious atmosphere that all of the panelists and attendees have been maintaining.
In response to this, there have been a multitude of differing opinions and interpretations of how Sargon chose to respond to Anita's actions. On one side of things, you have people calling Sargon a hypocrite. On the opposite side, there are people calling him an SJW, or at least claiming that he's acting like one. Some people are saying that Sargon is being a victim, and some people are actually suggesting that Anita should file a restraining order against him. It should come as absolutely no surprise to anyone familiar with my channel that my perspective on this whole issue is going to be a bit different from the ones you've heard before. In fact, I would even go as far as to say that the overwhelming majority of people have an incorrect opinion of this event and Sargon's reaction to it. And this includes the people who say that Sargon's actions were completely justified as well. Now, it should be said from the outset that I'm not someone without bias on this issue. Not only am I a member of the anti-sjw community, but I'm also someone who is an extremely big fan of Sargon. I have seen every single video on Sargon's channel, and I have watched Sargon's newest videos almost immediately as they come out. So it is absolutely safe to say that Sargon is one of my favorite YouTubers. However, this does not mean that Sargon is infallible in my eyes. In a previous video, I criticized him for his reaction to the Lacey Green situation. And of course, I've disagreed with him in the past on certain issues or viewpoints of his numerous times. Just not publicly, aside from maybe some YouTube comments that I don't really feel like digging up right now. I'm telling you all of this to say that I'm not part of some cult of personality around Sargon. His politics and my politics are very, very similar, and that is the primary reason I'm a fan of his. So, with all that being said, let's first look into the people accusing Sargon of being a hypocrite, which is an accusation that came from both the SJW and anti-sjw sides, with slightly different wording for each. Fundamentally, they're both saying the same thing. Since Sargon is engaging in what is essentially a letter-writing campaign, something he has rallied against SJWs for doing in the past, that this must be a show of hypocrisy on his part, right? Well, actually no. Sargon is not against letter-writing campaigns, nor has he ever suggested that they are an illegitimate means of encouraging some sort of change. The first instance of Sargon engaging in a campaign like this goes back to the good old Gamergate days, specifically Operation Disrespectful Nod, in which Gamergaters contacted the brands who advertise on Gawker Media's websites and expressed to them clearly and accurately why they should not associate themselves with the brand and its many websites. This was a mass collaborative action that only served to expose the actions of Gawker to these companies who may otherwise be unaware of them, just as many of these same gamers were before the initial events that set Gamergate into motion. This is a stark contrast to flooding the inbox of a person's boss with messages saying that this employee is a rape apologist, or you hired a Nazi, or some other non-truth designed to simply get a person fired, or otherwise punish someone financially for having a political opinion that disagrees with your own. This is Sargon's issue with this action in this circumstance. The letter-writing campaign itself is not the problem. The slander is what the actual problem is. So no, Sargon is neither being a hypocrite, nor is he being an SJW. Oh, and before I forget, another angle to this was something to the effect of, Sargon was okay with Anita getting harassed, but now he's acting like a baby because she said mean words to him. I'll refer you to a video of his published in 2015.
At FemFreak, you are a despicable whore, smiley face. I don't think it's unreasonable for her to classify this as harassment, because frankly there was no need to send her this message. At FemFreak, kill yourself, feminists are a waste of air, and also, more games should have girl characters half naked such as Tomb Raider, etc. This was a troll account that seems to have been suspended. Shut the fuck up, bitch, I'm the lawyer of this community, got something to say, take it up with me. At FemFreak, bitch, we're not talking about that, so I hope you get fucking raped, you fucking whore. This is one that I would actually classify as harassment. This account appears to have been suspended. At FemFreak, you stupid fucking cunt, I'ma fucking rape you, blah blah blah. This is the first actual threat on the list, and unsurprisingly this person has been suspended. There is of course no reason to harass or threaten Anita, and I am glad that Twitter has dealt with these accounts accordingly by suspending them.
And just as Sargon recognized that these users had done something wrong and supported Twitter's decision to remove these users from the site, Sargon is making the statement that Anita has done something wrong, and that she should be removed from this single panel on harassment for, in Sargon's eyes, engaging in harassment and breaching the rules of Vidcon. Now this brings us to the opposing case of people who think that Sargon's actions in starting this petition were completely justified. No, they were not. A content creator on a panel hurling insults at a paying customer of Vidcon just because they felt like it is not something worth stripping that content creator of one of their speaking engagements, nor is it something that I would expect Vidcon staff to do with any similar altercation involving any other two YouTubers. Why do I say that? I can infer this based on the reaction that Vidcon staff and security had in regards to this situation alone. They were not specifically interested in punishing either individual for the event. Instead, their concern was coming to a peaceful resolution to the situation itself so that Vidcon could continue without further incident. And the reason I say that is because this happened immediately following Anita's berating of Sargon.
So after the thing, I don't know if anybody's told you this already, but the head of security was there because Anita had texted security saying she felt unsafe. And the head of security had told us that she said that the 3 rows of shitlords in the front row made her feel unsafe and that it was an act of aggression as far as she was concerned. So that's why 3 extra security guards showed up. And the security lady asked us if we could please sit in the back so Anita doesn't have to see us in the next few panels she's on. And then I said to the security lady that Anita is a performer and it's her duty as a professional to not react to people in the crowd when they have said nothing to her. and the security lady agreed and said I had a good point, and that was that.
Now what this tells me is that Vidcon staff were intent on acting as mediators for both the group of anti-sjw YouTubers and for Anita Sarkeesian herself. I would wager that following this event, Vidcon staff likely sat Anita down and reprimanded her for her actions. In fact, in the statement Vidcon released, this is exactly what they confirm. So given how both sides of the situation likely played out, Sargon having responded to this whole thing with a petition seeking retribution against Anita was foolish. It comes across as a political point-scoring exercise, and actually delegitimizes him because he made the assumption that Vidcon were not applying their rules evenly without actually taking into account how they would respond to a situation like this had it not involved him and Anita, or any two YouTubers who talk about the kinds of topics that both of them do. He assumed from the outset that their response to this would be biased, and because of that, Vidcon staff has been put in a position where all they can do is view him in a negative light, because they don't fully understand the context of this interaction between him and Anita. Specifically, they don't understand where he's coming from, and for them, it's not something that should have ever factored into this situation, which is why he never should have made this petition. The problem here, just as I explained to Tim Blake on Twitter, is that there is no relevant context to this interaction that took place at this panel. At least, there ought not to be for the staff at Vidcon. So when both sides turn an objective problem into a subjective one, the side with greater influence over the situation has more weight behind what they say. This is not even mentioning the fact that making a video urging hundreds of thousands of people who dislike Anita Sarkeesian already to send emails to Vidcon's founders has an overwhelming potential to attract people who are just going to vent their frustrations with Anita at Hank and John in a completely unconstructive manner. I have absolutely no doubt that for every rational and reasonable email they received, they got 5 more from some 13-year-old who just hates Anita's guts, and the only reason why is because Sargon did this.
If you wish to support this petition, please politely contact Hank or John with your own respectful statement on their public email addresses, which are linked in the description of this video. Thank you for your time, and I hope the remainder of VidCon can pass without any more such incidents.
Instead of trying to stir up this campaign, all Sargon needed to do was take this in stride and let Vidcon do their jobs as they saw fit, instead of throwing his own personal opinions into the situation. Then he would have seen if there was any bias in how they acted in this situation, and he wouldn't have been in a situation where he has unfairly prescribed motives to a neutral entity. This is now a mess, and it needs to be cleaned up. I don't normally do any sort of call to action in my videos, but if you're watching this, even if you don't happen to agree with me here, could I ask you to tweet this video to Sargon in the hopes that he will see this and be able to respond to me about it? This is not some moral grandstanding exercise to show how I've got some better, more valuable perspective than Sargon does. I just see where this situation could go even further south in a hurry, and I see where this situation could have a resolution that will be favorable for all parties involved. But this all depends on how things are handled from this point forward. And in regards to that, I've just seen Sargon's video responding to Vidcon and Anita's statements. Rather than make you all wait on my thoughts about that, I may as well just tell you right now. Sargon's video has just gone up earlier, and I've watched it twice now to make sure that I was correctly representing everything. But this is a slightly more off-the-cuff kind of thing because I haven't had any time to refine my thoughts on the subject, so please bear with me a little bit. I think that instead of petitioning some kind of action from the staff at Vidcon, that this is exactly the kind of video that Sargon should have made in response to what Anita did. If at the time he had shown that what Anita was saying about him was untrue to this third party, who were understandably bewildered by this whole exchange, then they would have taken actions and made statements that were more favorable at the time, instead of now being in a situation where they find Sargon to be the aggressor and Anita to be the victim. Ultimately, I'm afraid that this might have come too late. Right now, I think that they saw the petition video as a point-scoring exercise, and that based on their interactions with Anita, their first impression of Sargon, and their complete lack of familiarity with the issues at play, that this video will just fall on deaf ears. I think that what Sargon might want to do now is go out of his way to contact the people at Vidcon, so that he can request an audience and actually have the chance to express his thoughts, feelings, and concerns clearly, concisely, and candidly. I have never interacted with or observed Anita in person before, but I think that there is no coincidence that these things seem to routinely go in her favor. So I would wager that she has some level of persuasion that hides her ill intentions, and I think that probably the biggest mistake he made was leaving Vidcon without having met up with the event's organizers in person. As a large YouTuber, I am sure that they would have been very willing to have someone sit down and listen to his concerns, and it was an opportunity that was quite frankly squandered, and something else I would consider to be a reason why they might not see him as being genuine. Again, I want to stress that my issues here aren't with any kind of moral BS about some non-issue. My issue here is that this situation was mishandled, especially since Sargon had the opportunity to simply go and talk to Hank or John in person, and instead only Anita did so. I understand that this is the first time Sargon has actually been able to deal with these issues as a human being, and not in a way where he's removed from being able to have any direct impact in real life. But if you're going to leave the throne and attempt to engage with people in this way, you must remember that you cannot take things from one aspect of life, this real-life physical interaction, and make it into an online interaction in every circumstance.